Welcome, dear listener, to the History series, where the past unfurls like a scroll, inviting you to drift into its secrets. Picture a twilight over the forbidden city, its crimson walls catching the last rays of the sun. Silk robes whisper through shadowed halls, and the air hums with ambition, danger, and unspoken dreams. Tonight, we follow the footsteps of a palace Eunuch boy named Li Wei, whose life will carry us through the rise and fall of those who served the emperors of ancient China. Theirs was a world of sacrifice and power, of fleeting glory and quiet tragedy. Settle into your blankets, close your eyes, and let Li Wei's story guide you into the heart of the imperial court. The boy who entered the palace in a small village nestled among rice fields. Under the vast skies of Han Dynasty China, a boy named Li Wei dreamed of a life beyond the mud and toil. It was 100 BCE, and his family, worn thin by hunger, saw only one path to survival: the palace. At 13, Li Wei was sold to the emperor's service, his fate sealed with a knife's cruel cut. The procedure was a haze of pain, a sacrifice to ensure he could serve in the emperor's inner court without ever threatening the imperial bloodline. As he awoke, trembling, in a cart bound for Chang'an, Li Wei didn't know he was stepping into a world where he could rise to touch the stars or fall into oblivion. The Han Palace was a maze of stone in splendor, its halls alive with the clatter of jade ornaments and the scent of incense. Li Wei, now a eunuch, was no ordinary servant. Trained in calligraphy, his slender fingers danced across silk scrolls, copying poems for the emperor's pleasure. He learned to move silently, to bow just so, to anticipate the needs of the Son of Heaven. The Hanshu tells us of men like Cylon, who rose from such beginnings to invent paper, a gift that would outlive empires. Li Wei, too, dreamed of leaving a mark, but the palace was a dangerous place for dreams. Eunuchs like Li Wei were the emperor's shadow, trusted to guard his secrets and manage his household. They polished jade seals, served lotus soup at banquets, and whispered messages between the emperor and his consorts. But trust came with a price. Confucian scholars, in their flowing robes, glared at Li Wei and his kind, calling them unnatural, a stain on the moral order. In the court of Emperor Wu, a eunuch named Shao Gao had once twisted the emperor's will, leading the Qin dynasty to ruin. Li Wei heard these stories, felt the weight of suspicion, and learned to keep his eyes low and his heart guarded. The rise to power, a dance with danger, years passed, and Li Wei grew into a young man, his beauty and wit catching the emperor's eye. By the Tang Dynasty, in the golden age of Chang'an, eunuchs like him were no longer just servants. They were power brokers. The Zizi Tengjin speaks of Gao Lishi, a eunuch who stood at Emperor Xuanzang's side, his whispers shaping the empire's fate. Li Wei, now in his 20s, found himself in a similar role. He was given a silk robe, its threads shimmering like moonlight, and tasked with managing the emperor's private chambers. His voice, soft but steady, carried weight in the candlelit halls. The Tang court was a world of splendor and peril, their words floating like petals on a breeze. He oversaw the Shen's army, a force loyal only to the emperor, and carried sealed edicts that could crown a prince or condemn a rival. When Emperor Xuanzang died in 820 CE, Li Wei stood among the eunuchs who chose his successor, their hands guiding the dragon throne. It was a heady power to hold an empire's future in your grasp, but Li Wei knew the cost. Every favor won him enemies' consorts who envied his closeness to the emperor, officials who scorned his lack of lineage. The palace was a chessboard, and Li Wei learned its rules. He smiled at consorts who hid daggers in their words, bowed to ministers who wrote memorials calling for his exile. He saw how Gao Lishi had navigated this world, earning titles and wealth, but also how quickly favor could fade. Li Wei's nights were spent practicing calligraphy, perfecting melodies on the guqin, anything to keep the emperor's gaze. Yet, in the quiet of his chamber, he felt the ache of his sacrifice, a body altered, a family lost, a life bound to the palace's walls. The pinnacle, a throne of shadows by the Ming dynasty. Li Wei's story takes us to the Forbidden City, its vermilion walls, a fortress of ambition. Here, in the 15th century, eunuchs reached the height of their power. Picture Li Wei, now a seasoned figure, his hair streaked with gray, standing beside Emperor Yongle. The emperor trusted him as he trusted few others, sending him to oversee the Eastern Depot, a secret police force that rooted out dissent. The Ming, she tells of Zheng He, a eunuch who sailed to distant shores, his fleets carrying the Ming's glory to Africa and beyond. Li Wei, too, dreamed of such greatness, but his world was one of whispers and knives. Under the Tianxi Emperor, in the 1620s, a eunuch named Wei Zhongxian ruled as a shadow emperor. Li Wei, in our tale, served under him, watching as Wei purged the Donglin Academy, silencing scholars who dared oppose him. Temples rose in Wei's honor, his name spoken with awe. Li Wei marveled at this power, but he saw its fragility. The palace was a nest of vipers. Consorts schemed, officials plotted, and even eunuchs turned on each other. Li Wei learned to navigate these currents, aligning with Wei while keeping his own counsel. He penned reports in the dead of night, his ink-stained fingers trembling, knowing a single misstep could cost him everything. But power was a fleeting guest. When the Tianqi emperor died, the Chongqing emperor turned on Wei Zhengxiang. Li Wei watched as Wei, once untouchable, fled the capital, only to hang himself in despair. Were torn down, his name cursed. Li Wei, too, felt the ground shift beneath him. The emperor's favor was a candle in the wind, and Li Wei's heart, hardened by years of service, began to crack under the weight of fear. The cost of loyalty, a life unraveled. Li Wei's life was a tapestry of gold and shadow. He lived in chambers adorned with jade, ate delicacies from silver trays, yet he was alone. Eunuchs could not marry, could not father children, could not claim a legacy beyond the palace. The Qing Shi Gao speaks of the physical toll, chronic pain, weakened bones, the constant risk of illness from the castration that defined them. Li Wei felt this in his joints, in the sleepless nights when he turned to wine to dull the ache. His only family was the palace, his only loyalty, the emperor. But even that was a chain. The court was a battlefield of whispers. Consorts, their smiles sharp as blades, accused Li Wei of overstepping his place. Officials, in their scholars' robes, wrote memorials branding him a corrupt shadow. In the Qing dynasty, under the Yongzheng emperor, eunuchs like Li Wei faced new restrictions. The emperor, wary of Ming excesses, forbade them from commanding armies or meddling in state affairs. Yet, Li Wei found ways to serve, managing the emperor's private treasury, his hands steady, as he counted gold coins under flickering lamplight. But the palace was unforgiving. In 1869, a eunuch named Anda Hai, a favorite of Empress Dowager Cixi, was executed for leaving the capital without permission. Li Wei, in our story, knew such risks. He had seen eunuchs exiled, their names erased, their lives reduced to footnotes. He walked a tightrope, balancing loyalty with survival, his heart heavy with the knowledge that no amount of service could guarantee safety. In the quiet of his chamber, Li Wei traced the calligraphy of his youth, wondering if he had traded his soul for a fleeting taste of power. The Fall, a dynasty's end by 1912. The Qing dynasty was crumbling, and with it, the world Li Wei knew. The last emperor, Pui, was a boy, his throne a relic in a changing world. The Taiping Rebellion, Western cannons, and internal rot had weakened the empire. When Pui was expelled from the Forbidden City, Li Wei, now an old man, stood among the last eunuchs, their purpose gone. The Qing Shi Gao tells of Sun Yaoting, a real eunuch who served until 1924. his life a bridge to a modern age that had no place for him. Li Wei, too, faced this emptiness. His silk robes tattered, his dreams of glory faded. The eunuch system, once a pillar of the palace, was swept away. Reformers blamed eunuchs for the empire's fall, echoing centuries of scorn. Yet, Li Wei's story, like those in the 24 histories, reveals a deeper truth. Eunuchs were both victims and architects, their lives shaped by a system that demanded everything and gave little in return. Today, their tales live on in dramas like Rui's Royal Love in the Palace, where their cunning and tragedy captivate us, a reminder of the human heart behind the empire's grandeur. Cultural reflections, echoes in the night Li Wei's life, like the lives of countless eunuchs, was a flame that burned brightly, then flickered out. They were men who rose from sacrifice to touch the edges of power, only to be consumed by its weight. Their story asks us to ponder the cost of ambition, the price of loyalty, and the resilience of those who lived in the shadows of emperors. As you drift toward sleep, let Li Wei's tale linger, whisper from the past, carried on the wings of history. As the forbidden city falls silent, Li Wei's footsteps fade into the night, joining the countless stories etched into China's past. Thank you for walking with us through this hour-long tale on the History series. If Li Wei's journey has stirred your heart, subscribe to our channel for more stories that breathe life into history. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which forgotten souls you'd like to meet next. For now, let the palace's whispers guide you into a peaceful slumber. Good night, and may your dreams be woven with the threads of ancient tales.